Hello, welcome to Chloe Mew Mew Productions. I am Dark7777. I know Miss Mew Mew. Anyway, welcome to my fanfiction reviews. This is going to be a series on the channel where I review fanfictions. And you're wondering why fanfictions? I'll leave that for a future video. But in these episodes, I talk about a fanfiction that I read, and I basically review it. I review it on 5 sections on a scale of 1 to 10, and I'll get to those as the review goes along. So, the first episode is... Lost my train of thought, sorry. I do that sometimes. I wander off like a leaf on the wind. Maybe I should play Flower again. It was so hippie. But I digress. To quote my favorite YouTuber of all time. The story I'm going to be reviewing is Yu-Gi-Oh! The Thousand Year Door. I actually talked to the author recently, and he said that all the mistakes that were in the story, he fixed in the redone version. Yes, there's a redone version of this story. Now, before I get to the bulk of the review, please pause the video. Go to the description. There's a link to the story. Please read it, and so that way you can comment on. You have it fresh in your mind, and stuff like that. And make sure to like and subscribe and comment. I appreciate construction criticism. So, Yu-Gi-Oh! The Thousand Year Door by Cyber Commander. If you don't know who Cyber Commander is, then you don't know fanfiction, because he's the guy who created the very, very famous Shadow Chaser series of stories. I mean, Shadow Chasers is one of those big fanfictions that broke out, like anyone who, it's like Twist and Shout from the Supernatural, or like Fallout Equestria from My Little Pony. It's Yu-Gi-Oh! Version of those two stories. So anyway, the first section is plot. The plot is somewhat obvious. It's the plot of the story, but how it's done is just as important as what the plot is. You could have a 1,000 word story, and if it has a good enough plot to warrant that 1,000 words, it's still going to get a good score. Just because it's a long story doesn't mean it's going to be good. I mean, My Immortal, for one. My Immortal. I don't know what My Immortal is. I heard of it. You'll see nothing, you'll know nothing, I know nothing! Sorry. So, I'm gonna... Sorry. Just saw an episode of Hogan's Heroes. Oh god, that show is so old. So, the plot of Yu-Gi-Oh! The Thousand Year Door is, it's a combination of kind of a typical Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament story and Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door. 1,000 years ago, the Shadow Queen, or in this case, Sydney Myers, quotation marks, air quotes, takes over the world. And then 3 heroes, which turn out to be the Amazoness Queen, the Dark Magician, and the Lord of Dragons, team up and seal her with the help of the partners from the 1,000 Year Door. And then she's stuck behind there for 1,000 years, self-explanatory. But she finds a loophole in the curse. If one of the descendants of the warriors who defeated her were defeated in a fair fight, then she's allowed to go free. Which is, it's a very good plot. It's not the best plot I've ever read. There's not going to be so much twist. It's the typical, okay, find the MacGuffins and save the world from the thing behind the locked door. But I like the whole idea of it being fair fight. That at least puts a nice wrinkle on it, because you're not going to see cheat, and you get to see some nice uniqueness to it. So we meet the 3 protagonists, Andy, Francesca, and Stan, as they are accomplished duelists. They travel to this place called Monster Island, which is basically Rogueport minus the moon. I mean, really, you're gonna see them going to the moon? No, I don't really think so. So that switched with a level from, I think, Wario Land. Remind me in the comments. And so they travel along the land, winning duels, stopping the Shadow Queen's children, meet the locales, have lots of fun, have lots of duels, and save the world. It's not a really big plot. It's an okay plot. Again, it has to be won in a fair fight. At least adds a unique wrinkle to it, because usually those types of stories, they say, oh, they have to win, period, or they have to kill them. But seeing that, it has to be a fair fight. That at least warrants some extra brownie points. So I have to give the plot an 8 out of 10. It's not great, but it's just good enough to warrant an average. Yeah, to me, average is about 8, maybe 7.5. Second part, character development. This is the second big one, where I talk about the characters and how they grow from point A to point B. And the reason why I was the author Cyber Commander actually said that, again, he made the redone version. Go read the redone version; it's much better. No trashing on the original. The original's okay, but Redux is just miles better. Oh, I got off topic. Should I play? Oh, now I got it. Basically, the characters, they're one-dimensional, bland, to a point. Stan and Andy, they're interchangeable. It's like half the time it's like which one's Andy and which one's Stan. Francesca, she is a little better. She does use the lore of the Amazonians to give her some character development. Not a lot, but at least enough to differentiate herself from the other two. There's the Shallow Children, which, aside from the Shallow spawn of Darkness, Vladimir, they're all the same. It's like, okay, you got Maria, who's a sadist, but she's also pretends to be a pirate. Then there's Leopold, who's a sadist who pretends to think he's smart. Then there's it's like, why? They're just so forgettable, and a lot of the characters are. That's just it. A lot of the characters are forgettable. The only memorable characters are Francesca, the Shadow Queen, and Vladimir. Even a character named Merle, which really should have been changed to Merlin. Just a thought, since Merle's a chick in the game. Just a thought. It's not really that memorable. It says something about how the story is, and the story and how the story is written doesn't help. Consider the fact it starts out okay. See the characters, they're walking down, they see a duelist, they say hi, they challenge a duel, and then the rest of the chapter is just one gigantic duel. You can't do a story like that, and that leaves a lot of problems with the character development, the pacing, the imagery. The imagery is okay. I'll get to that a little bit. And everything is just a mash hodgepodge to rush to the duels. And I have to say, the duels are great. The duels are mixed. I mean, considering the fact the story only goes to the part way into the GX era, probably Vampire Deck would probably have to be the farthest it's gone in the GX era, since there's like a Vampire Genesis. Never mind. No, there's a Sphinx deck, so yeah, probably a little smidge farther. And there's lots of. So there's some one-off characters that are kind of good. There's Kyle, who uses an Ancient Gear deck, and he's okay. He comes out as smart aleck sometimes, but he's okay. But finally the Shadow Queen, who's probably the most developed character. Sorry for getting off topic a lot. I'm a scatterbrain. All my mind is scattered. It's like, God dang it, throw everything out the wall and hoping he remembers. Sorry. The Shadow Queen is probably the most developed character in the story. She comes off as like a psychotic mama bear who means well, but who's just so obsessed with wanting to get out. She's like, She calms, she gets crazy, and she has a lot of airtime. She probably has the most time in the entire story for her, and the most speaking lines and everything. And it just comes off as honestly more sympathetic. You see her, and it's like, I want her to win. I want her to win. Why can't she win? Why can't she win? And you see the rest of them, it's like, who's that? I don't know, who's that? A lazy guy named Gerald? Oh wait, I remember him. He's the self-proclaimed laziest duelist in the world, which is not a bad idea for a character. So, on the merit of character development, I have to give this character development a 4, just for the sole fact that only one character is really, really memorable, and that's the bad guy. Grammar is, again, self-explanatory. The more mistakes you made over the course of the story, the lower the score. I have to give it an 8 out of 10, mainly because of the fact there's some errors, mostly with quotation marks. He seems to put quotation marks in odd areas, sometimes accidentally forget to add quotation marks, and that's really it. I can't really go. Grammar is probably going to be the slowest and fastest. Next, pacing and imagery. I pride myself on how I read. How I read is I watch a story like a movie. I read the words, my mind filters them and turns it into a movie. Like, I see them acting. It's like someone says something, my mind would picture the appropriate image, the appropriate body language. I had to take a lot of classes in high school on body language, so I at least know what I'm talking about on that. And so how this one is rated is how well the words pace the words themselves and how they're worded to appropriate into the images in my mind. Excuse me, I had something to drink. And how they incorporate them into the images. The more detailed, it doesn't matter if they're detailed, as long as they're clear, as long as the wordplay is clear, as long as the pacing, like, there's slow-paced stories, there's medium-paced stories, and fast-paced stories. And the pacing of this story, I see like a moderate pacing, not too fast, not too slow, except with the Shadow Queen, that kind of needs to be built. That should have been built up, because it's one of those stories where the bad guy has to be built up to at least appropriate that you want to get behind the protagonist. And I have to say the pacing is decent, and the wordplay is okay, but it all harks back to the speed, how we get the low character development, but with the massive duel. And the imagery, everything before the duels and everything after the duel is bad. You don't really, everything's like homogenized, not really details. You have to make up a lot of details on your own, which is okay in a story like this, but when you're doing it a lot, you kind of makes it hard to picture it, and doing it over and over and over again, and this story is long. It's around 500,000 words. That's long, and so constantly having to give only small details on areas they're going into and seeing like, okay, and not doing appropriate world building, and just skipping right to the duel. And after the duel, he said, okay, bye, next chapter. And you kind of see that disconnect. So the imagery is off a little, but for everything other than duels, the duels themselves, they're great. Hi, Perseus. That's my son, if you heard his cry. Hi, Perseus. Hi, Perseus. Oh, he's smiling at me. Sorry, sometimes I'll just go and say hi. The monsters themselves, they're designed in great detail, enough that even people who never played Yu-Gi-Oh!, and I played Yu-Gi-Oh! Since the beginning, I know what I'm talking about when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh! And I pride myself on a duelist. I activate my trap card. That's as cliched a line in the anime as you're gonna get. But I digress. Sorry. I just love his Let's Plays and his videos. I'm getting off topic. And they give you a lot of details, how they work, how they're used, and conjunction with there's a lot of original cards in this game, in this story. There's a lot. And the fact is, they're not exactly broken. I mean, yeah, card is sanctity. You give her all the cards in your hand, and I think it's the field, and you draw 2 cards. I can't remember the full card detail on it. I probably have to go to my app for that. I'm getting stop getting off topic, Dad. But anyway, they're balanced. They're balanced to the point that okay, they're not game breaking like first game breaking cards. Like Absolute Zero. I hate Absolute Zero. But you see, like a lot of fun. You see, like a lot of creativity goes into the cards. Like you see, but I never heard of that card. I never heard of that. Oh, just what? Oh, that's not bad. It makes sense in the age of the eras that they're showing. And the pacing is decently done. It's not too fast that you don't rush to the end, but it's not too slow that it's just a slog to read through. It's not like going through oil or molasses, and you get bored with it and you go to sleep. So I have to give pacing and imagery a 4 out of 10. Why does it say 4? It should be 6. Hold on one second. 6. No, I give it a 5. I had to do the story so many times that I completely forgot what the rating score is of how I review it. Sorry about that. And the final part, connection to genre and emotional investment. What makes a good story great? It's how we see ourselves in the story. It's how we can connect with the story through believable characters, believable stories, and we see ourselves wanting to come back to the story. I like that story very, 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 very much. And I'm going to read it again, just for fun. And that's what makes a good story great. That ability to be so well written, so well to people's emotional investments, how well they get emotional, how well they want to get invested in the story. And that's a very hard thing to do. Not every story, and this is probably, and also it's probably going to be the most opinionated one, because while some people get invested in a certain story, some people may not in that same story. So it's really, really hard to gauge this one. Emotional investment, meh. It's not. You don't get emotionally invested until right around chapter 40, like near the end, and that's a bad thing to do because of how what's the word for it I'm looking for? Not haphazard. Scattered, that's what I'm looking for. Scattered the writing and the plot and everything is. It's just so hard to get invested over non-existent characters, non-existent areas, non-existent anything outside the villain and the bulk of the story, which is the duels. And it's hard to invest in a story that doesn't give you much. The other half of it is connection to genre. This one is more factual. How well a story is connected and written in connection to the genre it's being told. Like if it's an adventure story, do I feel like I went on an adventure? If it's a comedy, did it make me laugh? If it's a sad story, did it make me cry, like angsty? Better Off Alone. I would. Getting off topic, I'm going to review that in the far future. I don't want to spoil anything. connection to genre, it's a... I gotta look up the story. 1 second. So how are you? Perseus? Get down for the lap? Yes. Oh, I did get down with the lap. Are you smiling? Sorry about that. I really should have left. Okay, it's a fantasy adventure, 65 chapters, 504,838 words. Adventure, okay, I can see the adventure. It's a bland adventure, but I can at least see where the story is coming from in terms of adventure. Fantasy, it's kind of a hard. Fantasy is hard due to the fact there's also a sci-fi genre on the site, and so it's kind of hard to juggle them and see which one makes sense in sci-fi, which one makes more sense in fantasy. And for fantasy, it's there. It's probably more closely associated with fantasy than adventure. I would get rid of adventure because fantasy can also mean an adventure story. So it's kind of a combination of adventure and sci-fi, and switch out adventure with adventure with sorry, I'm trying to collect my thoughts. Adventure, no, fantasy, and what was that one? Maybe it does fit adventure more. Never mind. Right, fantasy adventure. I have to give it a 5 because it's there. You see the fantasy, but at the same time you don't. And adventure, you see it and you don't. And that's due to not really being able to get invested in anything substantially. You see it and you don't. And I have to give it right in the middle. And overall, it comes to a 2.9. No, wait. Sorry, that was the old score. 5, 10, 14, 30. You get it. A solid 3, which is a S, which is a solid S minus. Now, before I get to the final thoughts, everything I said is rendered moot by the redone version. The redone version is more than likely miles better than the original. That's not a knock on the original because the original is a lot of fun. That being said, my final thoughts. This story is truthfully all over the place. The characters are bland, while the duels are engaging. Some of the characters are memorable, a lot of them are not, and really off point. There was no need for a romance. It felt and that's probably the worst part of the story, in my opinion, is the forced romance of Francesca and Andy, or was it Stan? Dang it! Now I'm screwing myself up. There was no need for a romance story. Part of this. There was no need for romance aspects. There's some stories that deserve romance. This is not one of those stories. Now, is there going to be a romance in the Redux version? I do not know. I have yet to read it. And it's just my opinion, and I have to say, I got ahead of myself. Sorry. There's final 2 parts. There's what I recommended, and finally my favorite part of the story. And that's what it says on the tin, people. Favorite part of the story. It'd have to be the duel between Stan and Vladimir. not the first duel, the second duel, and how well they built up at least Vladimir to the point you kind of sympathize that he doesn't want the Shadow Queen to win, and he's willing to sacrifice because at the end of the duel he had the Deckmaster system, and that's another thing I'll bring up in a smidge. He had the Deckmaster and he had Jinzo, which means he could play trap his opponents can't. And right when the tables turned, he had a moment of 30, and I like this part. And it stopped the duel, went into his mindscape, and had him finger a card in the duel desk, which was remove trap, which was Magic Jammer. And that decision was basically the high point of that entire chapter, that entire duel, and why I at least like Vladimir above all of, because he at least had a moral code, but he wasn't above torturing and sadism, but he was more of an honorable demon than just a regular sadist like the other ones. And then he decides not to activate the card. Rather, he know they're good enough that they have a chance of winning, have a chance of defeating his mother, and decides to play and let him lose. And I like the whole idea of, seeing that noble side of a villain. It makes at least villains at least more interesting, because once you reach noble territory and anti-villain territory, you can go any which way, and how you do it becomes creative. Also, one last fact before I recommend. Why did the story have to legitimately end with a copy and paste of Big 5 Duel from the virtual arc of Duel Monsters? That was just incredibly lazy. Because, I have Cosmo Queen, and she's unstoppable. Oh no, she's destroyed. Oh, that's it. I play this card. I summon 5 Demon Headed Dragon God. And then, oh wait, she's destroyed. I have Berserk Dragon now. Lazy. I'm a stereotypical villain, and I'm getting off topic. Sorry. I made him laugh. Yay! I'm a good father. Now, would I recommend this? No. No, I would not recommend this story. And everything, it's so scattered, so haphazard. And everything doesn't come together, aside from the plot. I mean, the plot is decent, but not enough to redeem, in my eyes, that I would recommend the story. I do not recommend the story. I do recommend the redone version. I'm going to review that in the future, a special time. And this I promise. When I do the Christian thing, I'm Taoist. And so I really like this story. I might come back to the story, just the duels and some of the character interactions. They're decent. Not great, but decent. But overall, I have to give it an S minus, A plus. I don't know. It's 3. I can't remember. I don't know. No, A plus. Yeah, A plus. And there were so much expectations, and the story did not deliver those expectations. Because I heard a lot of good things about this story, and then I realized, it wasn't this one, it was the other one. Oops. So, that's my review. Please, again, I appreciate the constructive criticism. Please comment. Please tell me what you think of the review. I want to improve as a reviewer, because I see a lot of reviewers, they do all these things and different things. I want to see how I stack up to them. I'm not saying don't compare me to them, just tell me how I did and how I can improve. And so ends the first episode of my foray into YouTube. I hope I entertained you. And you all shall remember the name. I'm a wrestling fan. I have no idea where I was going for that. And so that's the end. And I have to edit this out. Stop. So, and cut. Did it go? Okay.
Yeah.
Is it going? Is it going? Please tell me. It didn't stop.